Hello everyone, we continue with Chapter 4, Part 3. Inoue had told me to run. Hijikata needed to hear his last words, and I was in no position to fight a demon. I knew all this, and I could hear a part of my mind screaming at me to run, but the roaring flames of rage drowned it out. How could I have let him die to protect me? Inoue was so kind. Just looking at his lifeless body sprawled in the dirt made my heart feel as though it would shatter into 1,000 pieces. But more than anything, I hated Kazama for killing my friend as if he was nothing more than an irritating insect. I grabbed desperately for my kodachi and pulled it from its scabbard, bringing it up into an attack position. I thought you were smarter than this. But I see now your time with the humans has poisoned your mind, said Kazama. You disappoint me. Shut up. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks. Why are you so upset? Does it bother you that I swatted this fly? He was a human, and he was foolish enough to challenge a demon. What other outcome could there have been? Shut up! Shut up! Never in my life had I spoken to someone like that, but never in my life had I so wanted to kill someone. If only I had been able to transform my wrath into strength, I would have been the strongest creature alive. You! I can never forgive you for what you've done. Please, Inoue, give me the strength to strike him down. I tightened my grip on my sword, my knuckles white, and leapt toward Kazama with a yell. Ah! Contemptuously, he slapped my strike aside. My kodachi flew out of my hands and clattered to the ground. I reached out to grab it again. Ah! Kazama's foot came down on my arm and pain shot through it. Enough of this stupid game. His red, arrogant eyes burned into mine, the eyes of the monster who had killed Inoue. You do not seem to understand who your master is. That is unfortunate, said Kazama. Perhaps I should punish you so that you will never defy me again. I felt the cold steel of his sword on my throat. Pain is an excellent tool for discipline. Fortunately, your body heals very quickly. Damn you! I glared at Kazama with all the anger I could muster, but all I got in return was a cruel smile. Inoue had told me to run, but I hadn't, and now I couldn't. Kazama was right about one thing. I couldn't escape from him. If I couldn't escape, then at least I could refuse to give him the satisfaction of a compliant victim. If all you're going to do is use me however you like, then I might as well bite off my tongue and drown in my own blood. Don't remember giving you permission to do that. And I don't much care for people who can't follow orders. The moment I heard that voice, my head suddenly cleared. There was no way I could mistake it. It was Hijikata! I felt tears spring to my eyes again, but for a very different reason. This was no dream, no hallucination. Toshizo Hijikata stood in front of me. Damn it, I had a feeling you guys were in trouble, but... He stopped just as his voice was about to crack and simply looked at Inoue's body, his face twisted with grief and regret. Hijikata's jaw tightened and his breath shook as if he were about to cry. I knew what I was about to say would hurt him, but he had to hear it. Inoue wanted me to tell you something. He said that he wanted to apologize for his incompetence, and he hoped you would forgive him for not staying with you until the end. There was a lump in my throat and my eyes burned, but I had to keep going. He said he didn't have the words to thank you for giving a man like him the chance to be a part of something, and that he'd never forget what you did for him. As I choked out the final words, I began to sob. Hijikata said nothing. Slowly, almost as if in prayer, he bowed his head. When he lifted it again, his eyes were changed. They shone now with the brilliant fires of rage. With tight, deliberate purpose, he drew his sword, the Izumi no Kami Kanesada. And that is the favored sword of Toshizo Hijikata, the work of an 11th generation Kanesada swordsmith. It whispered through the air as he raised it to an attack stance. Another human who wishes to throw his life away? It is difficult for me to understand why your kind is so anxious to die, said Kazama. I was hoping I'd seen the last of this idiocy. Very well, let's get this over with. Kazama's voice was bored, but as he spoke the fire in Hijikata's eyes grew into a raging furnace. Throw his life away, you piece of shit! How dare you say he threw his life away? Hijikata roared in wordless fury and launched himself toward Kazama. With all of his weight behind the blade, he struck at the demon's neck. Kazama flicked his sword up to catch Hijikata's. For a moment it looked as though they were evenly matched. And then Kazama was thrown back. What? Said Kazama. From the look on his face, it was likely the first time he'd ever found himself overpowered by a human, and he was stunned. Hijikata didn't let that opening go to waste. He pushed forward, his sword hissing back and forth through the air as if possessed. Grrr! Just moments ago, Kazama's face had been calm and serene. Now it was warped with frustration and surprise. Hijikata, by contrast, wore a manic grin, and his blade slammed again and again into Kazama's with more strength than I'd ever seen before. I never thought I would show this form to a mere human, said Kazama. Be honoured, mortal, the moment your eyes behold a true demon is the moment of your death. And with that, the battle changed. Gah, said Hijikata. Kazama's sword hummed and flickered through the air with ease, far faster and smoother than it had been a minute before. It was all Hijikata could do to anticipate and block his strikes, leaving him no time to try and land an offensive blow of his own. Where's the fire you had a moment ago? Said Kazama. Is this the most you can muster for the dead insect? Kazama's demonic strength and endurance were beginning to show. He wasn't even breathing hard. "Damn," said Hijikata. However, he was quickly running short of breath. All Kazama had to do was wait for him to tire and... "God damn it," said Hijikata. He threw his full strength behind his sword and lunged at Kazama one more time. The demon anticipated his blow easily and twisted to the side as Hijikata's blade swept past him. Gah! Kazama's hand snapped out and Hijikata's sword fell clattering to the ground. "Hijikata!" In my mind's eye, I could already see him crumpling to the dirt, just as Inoue had done, a slow puddle of blood growing under his still warm body. I had to do something. I couldn't let him die too. But I was utterly and completely helpless. Useless. Hijikata fell to his knees, his chest heaving. Sweat rolled down his forehead in streams, and the cloth of his shirt was soaked. Kazama lifted his sword and pointed it at Hijikata. "This is the end for you." His mouth curved up into a cold, confident smile. "Humans are such fools. They will try to fight what they know they cannot defeat. I call that recklessness, not courage. You have underestimated the power of a demon and chosen not to fear us. I hope your last thoughts are of shame at your ignorance." As Kazama spoke, Hijikata dragged his tired body across the ground toward his fallen sword. "What's this? Trying to run?" said Kazama. Hijikata had reached his sword. With the last ounce of strength he possessed, he lifted it up once again and turned to face his foe. "You won't bow, will you? I've made a fool of you, and yet you refuse to acknowledge the difference between us." No. Hijikata was not the sort of man to care about a difference in strength, but neither was he the sort of man that would simply abandon victory. So why then had he not responded? As I watched, he pulled out something from inside his shirt. Ah! A tiny bottle filled with red liquid. "The water of life, eh?" said Kazama. "How far do you mean to take this idiocy?" Hijikata replied with a toothy grin. "I'm an idiot, huh? Like I give a shit what you think. We were always a pack of idiots. We shared an idiot dream that we were all too bull-headed to give up on, and now here we are," said Hijikata. "We're halfway up the hill. If we stumble now, we're gonna fall all the way back down. Even if you become a fury, you'll be nothing more than a faded reflection of a true demon," said Kazama. Hijikata's grin never wavered. "Well, you never know till you try." "Hijikata, no!" My cries fell on deaf ears. Hijikata lifted the bottle to his lips and drank. In Hijikata's place there was now a white-haired demon. "Shut up!" Hijikata's voice rumbled out from the fury, dark and low, like approaching thunder. I've had enough of those effing cowards in the shogunate, and I'm sick of you goddamn demons. Say I'm not a real demon? Why the hell should I care? Never once in my whole stinking life have they treated me like a real warrior. His eyes burned with anger. But hell, where are you supposed to find a real warrior these days? Lot of men calling themselves samurai when all they do is sit behind 10 feet of stone in a castle and get fat. Only thing those sons of bitches care about is making sure the side they buddy up to is the side that's gonna win. We're better soldiers than any of those bastards, said Hijikata. His words weren't just for Kazama anymore. They were for Inoue, who had died in a fight he couldn't win, for the shogunate and the councillors who didn't have the courage to make difficult decisions, and for everyone who had ever refused to treat the Shinsengumi as true warriors. I believe what I believe, nothing can change that, and I will never, ever retreat. That's what's brought us this far. Call us fake if you want, but if we push hard enough and don't give up, eventually we become what we say we are. If I can defeat you now as a fury, then we can become real demons. Right? The predatory grin on Hijikata's face wasn't human. When he leapt at Kazama, he moved so fast that I could barely even see him. He'd been impressive as a human, but as a fury, he was beyond belief. Gah! Said Kazama. Kazama smashed aside the first attack, but a second followed it almost immediately, and then a third. Blow after blow crashed against his defences, giving him no time to even breathe. Come on, that all you've got? Said Hijikata. I thought we were just ants for you to crush. Where's your smart mouth now, demon? Hijikata's eyes flashed like a great beast closing in on its prey, and he lunged at Kazama. Ah! With an effort, he managed to swing his blade up in time to catch Hijikata's, but he'd lost the advantage of casually superior strength. Gah! Said Kazama. His sword rebounded from Hijikata's strike, and Kazama was forced back. Hijikata leapt for the opening. Ah! Said Kazama. Hijikata's sword moved too fast for the eye to see. A line of blood simply appeared on Kazama's face. He clapped a hand to it in surprise and pain, and jumped backward, trying to put space between them. Ah, great, said Hijikata. Looks like you're finally getting into it. You look like a man now. How's it feel to get cut by a fake? Kazama didn't even seem to hear Hijikata's words. He simply stared, eyes wide, at the blood that fell from his face to pool in his hand. Even as I watched, his wounds closed themselves. The stream of blood slowed to a trickle and then stopped. Damn you, said Kazama. Though the wound itself had disappeared, it seemed the ramifications had not. How dare you, false demon, insect, scum! How dare you draw my blood? It must have been the first time he'd ever been wounded by a human. Kazama's preternaturally calm face was distorted now by rage and disgust. It was the first time I had ever seen him truly look like a demon. I will never forgive you for this, said Kazama. I will torture you until you beg for death. You will learn what it truly means to feel pain. At last we get to see the real Kazama, said Hijikata. Fine, come at me. I dare you to kill me. He bared his teeth in a wicked smile. Their swords collided with a resounding crash. Gah, said Hijikata. Kazama had been strong before, but now his blows landed with all the strength of a cannon. Veins stood out on Hijikata's neck and forehead as he strained against the onslaught. Damn you, said Kazama. You are nothing, not even a shadow of a demon. How dare you draw my blood? Kazama had gone mad with rage, his golden eyes wide and bloodshot. Bastard, said Hijikata. Every time their swords met, I could see Hijikata's chip and shake. It looked as if the next blow could break it in two. Hijikata tried desperately to block with the back of the blade and protect it from more damage, but Kazama's strikes were too quick and too powerful. Hatred rolled off of them in waves. Neither of them would be satisfied with simply killing the other. I'll never forgive you, you arrogant son of a bitch, said Hijikata. You're going to hell even if I gotta drag you there myself. His clothes were soaked with blood, but eyes alight with vigor and determination shone out from beneath his white hair. Ha! Go to hell if you like, but you'll be going alone, said Kazama. They leapt at each other like enraged animals, blows flying so quickly that they could only defend or attack on instinct. It was clear that the battle would only end when one of them was dead, but it was rapidly becoming clear that Hijikata was fighting in a way that put him at a disadvantage. Back home he'd always been so calm, even in the heat of battle, but cool detachment had fled with his humanity. I had to stop them. If I didn't, Hijikata would die, but awe and terror at their display of violence and skill had sealed my voice in my throat. Even though I was a demon, just like Kazama, I was helpless. It was maddening. Yukimura! I heard footsteps pounding along the path and spun around to find the source of that familiar voice. Yamazaki appeared. The commander left to go see how things had gone with the Yodo, and he hasn't returned. Have you seen him? Yamazaki! His timing couldn't have been better. In that moment, Yamazaki looked like an angel. We're in trouble. Hijikata's fighting a demon, and Inoue is... I wanted to explain what had happened, but somewhere between my brain and my mouth it got all jumbled, and I found myself stammering unintelligibly. Yamazaki stared at me for only a moment before his glance passed my shoulder and saw the battle raging there. His eyes widened in shock and horror. What's going on here? That white-haired demon, is that a fury? No, those clothes, they're... Oh my God, said Yamazaki. Realization began to dawn on his face, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the battle. That's Hijikata. He drank the water of life. No, said Yamazaki. Ah, said Hijikata. With a dull twang, the sword leapt out of Hijikata's hands and clattered to the ground. This battle is mine, said Kazama. though I'm impressed that you lasted so long with such a dull sword." He gave Hijikata a tight smile. Said Hijikata. He kept low to the ground and slowly began to move away. Kazama followed just as slowly, his grin widening at Hijikata's apparent fear. "I hope you haven't forgotten that I don't intend to simply kill you," said Kazama. "Eventually you'll die, of course, but not before I've inflicted on you all the pain I can imagine." The advantage once again his, Kazama's calm had returned. "I know. When I'm finished, I'll skin you alive and send you ahead back to your beloved Shinsengumi, preserved in alcohol. They deserve to see you at your best. To start, though, I think I'll take off your arms, then feed them to stray dogs," said Kazama. Kazama hefted his sword, its blade still clean and undamaged. "Hijikata!" I screamed as loud as I could, some irrational part of me hoping that might change the outcome. A horrible, wet sound filled my ears. "What?" said Kazama. I looked up. Blood had splattered across the front of Kazama's shirt, but Hijikata was unharmed. "What are you doing, Commander?" said Yamazaki. "You are the mind of the Shinsengumi. We're your arms and legs. Why are you running off to face the enemy alone?" "Yamazaki, what are you saying?" His voice shook. Yamazaki smiled back, his eyes shining as I'd seen them do when he and Hijikata were discussing important secrets. "If you lose an arm or a leg, you can always replace it. But if you lose the head, you lose everything," said Yamazaki. "The chief and the commander, the two of you make a whole." With that, he went limp, the last of his energy exhausted, and crumpled to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him, turning the packed dirt a deep red. "Yamazaki!" I grabbed a hold of him as if that might somehow bring him back to consciousness. "Yamazaki, why?" His hair had slowly begun to shift back to its original color, and as I watched, he struggled to blink back tears. "Hey, Hijikata, Yamazaki, Gen!" Nagakura shouted. "Where are you guys?" Nagakura's voice echoed through the forest from some distance away. "Damn it," said Kazama. "I should just finish you off now." Kazama lifted his sword and made to swing it down when, out of nowhere, a hulking form appeared between us. "Stop," said Kyuju Amagiri. "Any further battles will only lead to unnecessary casualties." "Are you ordering me to retreat?" said Kazama. "Am I supposed to let this worm who dared to cut my face simply go free?" "Killing him would be easy enough for you," said Amagiri, "but to do so would go against the wishes of the Satsuma domain. Ultimately, they desire for the shogunate to fall by their hand, not the hand of a demon." His tone made it clear how little he thought of that desire, but his commitment to obedience was clearly greater. Kazama wasn't pleased with Amagiri's interruption, but he seemed to feel that it was pointless to argue over the matter with his fellow demon. Hijikata, was it? Said Kazama. I will not forget that name. I will have my revenge. Same to you, said Hijikata. I won't be able to sleep at night until I've sent your soul to the afterlife. They glared at one another with such hate, I felt as if they might spontaneously combust. Then Kazama spun on his heel and followed Amagiri off into the forest. No sooner had they disappeared. Hey, there you are, said Nagakura. Hijikata, what the hell's going on? There's dead men all over the place, said Harada. Did you run into some rebels? No, those are sword cuts. Go look at Yamazaki. I think he's still alive, said Hijikata. What? Said Nagakura. He stared in horror and sudden realization at Yamazaki's limp body. What happened here? Come on, Yamazaki, hang in there. Anybody got some clean cloth? Said Nagakura. And booze, anything alcoholic's good. Here, if you need a cloth, take this. He needs it more than I do, said Harada. Thanks, Sano. I'll help too. Let me look at him. I desperately called up everything I could remember about first aid and set to work next to Nagakura and Harada. Commander, what happened here? Said Saito. Hijikata didn't even seem to hear him. I never thought I would sacrifice my own men so that I could survive. Sacrifice? Said Saito. Inue's body is over there, said Hijikata. Can you give me a hand burying him? His men too. It gets cold this time of year. Can't leave him out there to freeze. I knew that he wanted to break down and cry more than any of us, but in front of his men he struggled to grin and joke. It was just too much. I felt myself begin to sob, but I couldn't bear to do it in front of Inoue and Yamazaki, so I buried my face in my hands and let the tears flow soundlessly. Inoue had given his life to save mine. Hijikata had become a fury to fight the demon who chased me across Kyoto. Yamazaki had taken a blow that might well end his life to protect Hijikata. What could I possibly do for them? How could I atone for my sins? I thought about it for a long time, but no answers came.